Hear that noise at the beginning of class. You have to remind me. Okay, so we know that if we have 2 plus 3, we're going to talk about fact families. 2 plus 3 equals 5. This is one fact in a fact family. If we have 2 marbles and we add 3 marbles to that, altogether we have 5 marbles. 2 marbles and 3 marbles all together are 5. We can look at this as part and part, and all together it equals the whole. Now these words are going to become very important later on in pre-algebra and algebra. I didn't even see you come in. Good morning. No, just watch right now because you know this. So I'm just talking about some things that I want you to think about, that I want to start kind of sitting in your brain, hanging out in your brain. Okay? So part plus part equals whole. We have one part here, another part here, and it equals our whole thing. Part plus part equals whole. And I know you know this, but I just want you to keep hearing those words because we're going to use them for years to come. Now, what we know is that if I start with this part and then add this part, it still gives me the same whole, doesn't it? That's why I can switch these. 3 plus 2 equals 5. So it doesn't matter. Remember we talked about these being addends, and this is a sum, but we don't have to remember that word addends because we're really not going to see it again. But we're going to see the word sum, aren't we, for years to come. So remember, the answer to an addition problem is the sum. So now, it doesn't matter which order. If I start here and add this one, or if I start here and add this one, it doesn't matter which order. I still get the same answer. Now, there are 2 more facts to this fact family. With the second 2, we start with the whole. We start with the whole thing of 5. We start with the whole, this same whole right here, and we say if we start with this whole and we take away one part, it will always equal the other part. We start with this whole and take away one part, it's always going to equal the other part. Now it's easy to see with 2 plus 3 equals 5, but you have to remember these rules when you have something like 2,341 plus what equals 7,689. Or if you have 2.578 plus what equals 5.329. This is where we're going to use these facts. Don't worry if this doesn't make sense yet. This will make sense later. Okay? This will make sense later. But we're going to look at it with numbers that we can easily see, and I don't want to draw 2,341 marbles, so I'm using 2 and 3. Yeah. So, but I just want you to see that's where we're going to use it. So it's going to make sense for the smaller numbers, but we're going to memorize the rules based on understanding them, right? We're going to memorize our rules based on understanding with small numbers. And then we're going to use those rules with our larger numbers and our decimals that are more difficult. So, the third math fact is we start with the whole, 5. We start with this whole, take away one part, and we don't even have to think about it. We don't even have to think about it. We know it's the other part, right? I mean, take away one part, you end up with the other part. Same thing if we start with the whole, and we take away this part, then of course we're left with this part. Okay, so that's an addition and a subtraction math family. Now, here, whenever we do the second 2, the subtraction always starts with the whole. Because you can't take something away without starting with the whole, right? Whatever you take away from, you're going to start with the whole, and then you're going to take part away. And I always write crooked. It drives me crazy, but I can't seem to stop. Okay. So when we do our subtraction facts, when we write our subtraction facts, we always start with the whole. And like I said, this is something that you're going to memorize for later when we get to bigger numbers. Now, let's review. When we're adding, we put the two parts together to get the whole. And then when we're subtracting, we start with the whole, subtract one part, and it always gives us our other part. Now, what we're going to do is review multiplication and division fact families. Multiplication and division. Addition and subtraction are partners. Addition and subtraction go together. Addition and subtraction are partners. Multiplication and division are partners. So now, let's take a look at, let's do 3 times 5 equals 15. Now remember, this is a multiplication sign. We don't use the little x anymore because it won't be long before we're using variables. So we don't use the x anymore. We just use a little dot to stand for multiplication. Does that make sense, Mila? Very good.
My mom told me that.
Who said that? Your mom told you that? Very good, very good. 3 times 5 equals 15. Now let's take a look at what this fact means. 3 sets of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna draw 3 sets. 3 sets of 5. 3 times 5. 3 times I'm gonna write 5. And you can see 5, 10, 15, that equals 15. Now, I have a set of 5, one set of 5, another set of 5, and another set of 5. 3 sets of 5. But now, let's take a look at, let me get another color here. If instead of this, here I have 3 sets of 5, right? Instead of that, I'm going to erase the blue part now. Instead of that, get that erased well. Okay. Let's make groups like this. We still have the same 15 marbles, but you can see now I'll put them in groups of 3. And how many do I have, Ms. Emma? How many groups of 3 do I have?
5.
That's right. 5 groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It still equals 15, doesn't it? Because I still have the same number of marbles. So multiplication facts are the same thing as addition facts. I can switch the first 2 numbers. Now remember, these are add-ins, or don't remember that, but those are add-ins. These are factors, aren't they? And we don't really need to, we do kind of need to remember factors, but we'll come back to that. But the important thing to remember right now, the answer to a multiplication problem is called the product. The product of 3 and 5 is 15, because product says multiplication. The sum of 2 and 3 is 5 because the word sum says addition. When I say the sum of 2 and 3, I'm talking about adding them together, and I know when I add them together, I get 5. Does that make sense? You think? Very good. When I say product, right? When I say product, you know right away I'm talking about multiplication because product is the answer to a multiplication problem. Does that make sense, Lane? Very good. And so that, you know, is 15. So now what we take a look at here is this is the part, this is the part, and this is the whole. 3 sets of 5. 3 is one part, 5 is the other part. 3 sets of 5 gives us 15. We can switch our parts, and 5 sets of 3 also gives us 15. Now, whose partners chase with multiplication? Do you remember? Division. That's right, division. Division. And this will help you with that one little thing that you don't have. And so we look at division facts, and we don't really have to memorize division facts. So that's good news, huh? We don't have to memorize division facts, but first of all, let me get this. You know what? It'd be faster just to draw 15 again. So I'm going to draw 15 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 3. Okay, so now when I talk about the division facts, just like with subtraction, I'm going to start with my whole. I'm going to start with my whole of 15 because my whole is 15. So I'm going to put this even with this one. I'm going to start with my whole 15, and I'm going to divide them into groups of 3. I'm going to divide my marbles into groups of 3. Now, if I divide my marbles, Jenny, into groups of 3, how many groups am I going to have?
5.
5. That's right. If I divide this whole into groups of 3, I get 5 groups. Right? I get 5 groups. Suppose, let me just draw them again so I don't have to erase all those blue lines. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here I have 15 again. Now my other fact is, of this fact family, I start with my whole. 2 of them I start with parts, and 2 of them I start with the whole. Now I'm going to say, if I take 15, here I took 15 and I divided by this part, and it gave me this part, didn't it? So if I can't remember that division fact, what is 15 divided by 3? I just say, what times 3 equals 15, right? Okay, what times 3 equals 15? Either one of these. What times 3 equals 15? And that's 5, so that's my answer. So getting back to this now, I'm going to, for my second math fact, I'm going to start with my whole, and I'm going to divide by this part now. Ryan, what part is it going to give me? I mean, okay, now I want to call you Chase. Blake. I need more coffee. Blake, that's my answer. Yes, watch this. If I start with my whole and I divide by this part, the 5, my answer is going to be 3. That's right. My answer is going to be 3. Yeah, I threw you off by calling you your brother's name. Do you get called your brother's name often? Yeah. Yeah, I always get called my sister's name. Okay, so this is an addition and subtraction math family, fact family. And this is a multiplication and division fact family. Now, it's very important to remember, with division, we start with our whole, we divide by one part, and we get the other part. Okay? So we're going to practice making some fact families. Let's turn to page 14. Look at the first one and see if you can fill in the blanks. Here's a clue, it's on the board. Oh, let's see. Oh, right here, right here. Yeah, there it is. But I gave him his math just now. Oh yeah, right, yes. Yeah, I forgot to take it out. So you have to take it out. this is your binder. No, this is your binder. I already gave you this map. Yeah, that's right. You were supposed to do this map. I have planned to do this map anyway. That's right. Get page 14. And remember, while we're working, you can check with your neighbor. If you're not sure, ask your neighbor. Here's page 14, and I'll get these in order for you to do that. Just the first one. Once you get one fact family, then you can get the rest looking for your parts in your holes, huh? Right? Does that make sense? So look, these are your two parts and this is your hole. So now you start with your hole. If you divide by this part, you're always left with the other part. Does that make sense? And so you know that this is a good thing. Because 50 divided in the root of 3 is 5. 50 divided in the root of 5. Yeah, I know. Sometimes I just have to say things a few times. It takes a little while to get things out of that sometimes. Let's just take the first one for now. Sometimes. I was planning on it today. And then you're going to take this a minute, and then just gotta get these in your binder for you. This is the next page. Oh, good. But we'll just get it right there. So this will be just the rest of it. And that way it's easy. Now that's easy. Very good, very good. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do the next one across from it. The one that says 7 times blank equals 7. 7 times blank equals 7. Now hold on a minute. What if you don't know? You probably know that one. But if you might not. Sometimes those ones are confusing. Let's take a look to see, yes, if you know any of the others. 7 times, yeah, I was looking at that one, huh? I'm sorry, 7 times what equals 49? 7 times what equals 49? Let me write this on the board. And we can use our calculators for this, don't worry. So we have 7 times what equals 49. And then it says, oh, the same thing. That's a strange one, huh? Then it says 7 times what equals, oh yeah, right, hello, 49. And then 49, no, then it says what divided by 7 equals 49, and what divided by 7 equals 49. Right?
Isn't it 49?
I just cannot think. Yes. I started off wrong. What divided by 7? Hold on. Whose was I looking at? Here's page 14. Here's page 14. So it's what divided by 7 equals 7? Yes. There's my problem, huh? What divided by 7? Thank you for drawing my attention to that. Okay, here we go. So now, suppose we don't know. I know you know, huh? But suppose we don't know. Let's see what we can tell from this fact family. Mila, do you see a whole? What do you think is a whole? Is my whole?
7.
Well, look right here. When we multiply two numbers, our whole is the answer, isn't it? So when we multiply 7 in some number, this would be our whole, wouldn't it? You see that? So what do you think is our whole, Mila? Do you think it's 49? Yes, 49 is our whole. We know this is our whole because we know that when we multiply, this is part times part, right? Now, we know that when we divide, we start with our whole, right? When we divide, we start with our whole. So, what do you think goes here? What do you think goes here? 49. 49. Very good. And 49. So what do you think our other part is? Ella, what do you think our other part is? 7. Because here are our two parts here, and so 7 goes here and 7 goes here. And I'm doing everything backwards today, y'all. I need to take roll. Let's go very quickly. Listen up. Say here when you hear your name. Alexa.
Here.
Today's the 27th?
Yeah.
That's what y'all told me. Elijah.
Here.
Truman.
Here.
Laney.
Here.
Maddie.
Here.
Emma.
Here.
Abby.
Here.
Ella.
Here.
Mia. It's town. Jenny.
Here.
Mila.
Here.
Bo. Bo's not here this morning. Chase.
Here.
Ryan.
Here.
Blake.
Here.
Not Ryan. Ryan's in the other class. I will get it straight this morning, eventually, maybe by this afternoon. Okay, so now let's go back to page 14. And let's take a look at the third one now. 2 times 4 equals blank. 2 times 4 equals blank. Complete that fact family for me. Abby, 2 times 4 equals what? 8. 2 times 4 equals 8. So then we know what, Jenny? 4 times
2.
4 times 2 also equals 8, right? Blake, if we start with, I was like, wait a minute, did I call the right? Blake, if we start with the whole, 8 divided by 2, what's our answer going to be?
4.
The other part. That's right, the other part. Maddie, if we start with 8, what do we have to divide by to get an answer of 2?
4.
8 divided by 4. Very good, very good. Now let's go to page 16. And don't worry, this does get harder. Remember, we're just doing some review, making sure some concepts are solid in your mind before we really get rolling this year. But it'll still be okay. Okay, so now you see on page 16, we have a triangle. And we have a 2 and a 5, right? And a 10. Sorry, they give us all three numbers. And it says circle largest number. Now, Elijah, I'm going to circle the 10 because the 10 is the largest one, right? What does that tell me about the 10? First of all, these are multiplication and division families. Making sure they all are. Yeah, these are multiplication and division families. In terms of part and whole, what do I know about the largest number, do you think? Is it the part or the whole? That's right. My largest number is always going to be the whole, right? We're talking about multiplication and division, so that means that this is a part, and this is a part, and this is my whole. So if I multiply my two parts, I get my whole. If I multiply my two parts in the opposite order, I still get my whole. And then the opposite of multiplication is division. If I start with my whole and divide by one part, I get the other. If I start with my whole and divide by the other part, I get the first. So when I have three numbers like this, I can come up with all of the facts of the fact family by identifying the whole to begin with, right? Does that make sense? Any questions about that? So this is going to be sort of like pages 14 and 15, but you are going to come up with the complete facts. Emma, does that make sense? Very good. Miss Mila, what do you think about that? Does that make sense? Very good. Jenny? Mr. Blake? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Now, let's go to page 17. Let's take a look at page 17. This is the beginning of where we're going to use this. So we have 16 divided by 2 equals what? Now, this is what I was telling you about, Chase, where you don't have to, you'll eventually memorize your division facts, but the quick way to memorize your division facts, this is a division fact, is to think about parts and wholes. If you have your multiplication facts memorized, this is division, so we know that we start with our whole and we divide by one part. Because remember, in division, we always start with our whole, right? In division, we always start with our whole. So then what we need to ask ourselves is, what this part and this part, we're missing a part, right? I know if I multiply these two parts, it will equal my whole. Multiply these two parts, it will equal my whole. Chase, 2 times what equals 16? 8. So if 2 times 8 equals 16, then we know 16 divided by 2 is 8. Did I put that in the right order as the example? So looking at the example, your question is 2 times what equals 16? Fill in this 8 right here. Fill in this 8. And then that gives you your answer to your division problem. Who does not have their division facts memorized? And who doesn't have it memorized but is too embarrassed to say? Well, that's good. That's good. Sometimes it's embarrassing. I don't mean to embarrass y'all. But you see, there are several people that don't have their division facts, and that's okay. That's okay. Okay, let's take a look at number 2. We have 30 divided by 3 equals what? So the question is, if this is my whole, that means this is a part and this is the other part. So Maddie, what question am I going to, yes, Miss Mila? Oh, yeah. Miss Maddie, what question should I ask myself here? This part times this part equals 30, right? So 3 times what equals 30? Because I know that I'm going to multiply my two parts to get my whole, right? And Maddie, 3 times what equals 30? 10. That's right. 3 tens is 30. And so 3 divided by 3. 30 divided by 3 is 10. You had a question, Miss Emma? Or you knew that answer? You can do the next one, okay? Oh, the next one's hard though, because I don't give you the question. Do you know the question? Okay, let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at number 3. Okay, this was number 1. This is number 2. So let's take a look at number 3. 6 divided by 3. 6 divided by 3 equals what? Emma, what is my whole? That's right, because this is division, so I know that this is my whole. What is this then, Emma? Part. And what's the missing one? The other part, huh? Because remember, we always have 2 parts in one whole. 2 parts in one whole, right? And so we have one whole, so the other 2 have to be parts. So now, what can I do with my 2 parts, Emma? In this fact family, what can I do? I can multiply my 2 parts, can't I? Right? So the question is, this part times this part equals this whole. This part times this missing part equals my whole. You see the question? And do you know the answer? Say it again. What do you think it is? Well, think about this. You're thinking of 3 times 6, and you know your facts. But you're thinking of 3 times 6. I want to know 3 times what equals 6. 3 sets of what equals 6? 3 sets of 2 equals 6, huh? 3 sets of 2. See, I have 3 sets of 2 here, and the whole is 6. You see that? I know it's hard to wrap your brain around because we're twisting things up. And so our answer is 2. 3 sets of 2 equals 6, so 6 divided by 3 is 2. This is a part times a part equals a whole. So our whole divided by 1 part equals the other part. Does that make sense?
I knew that.
I know, but you forget what part is the question, huh? Yeah, I know what you mean. What exactly what the question is. I know, that's why I drew it out for you. Okay, let's take a look at number 4. Our question is 20 divided by 2 equals what? Our first question. The problem is 20 divided by 2 equals what? Now, come up with the question. You know the answer? Do you know this division factor, or do you know the question? What question would I ask myself? What question would I ask myself? I would say, this is the whole, this is the part, this is one part, and this is the other part. So now, the question I'm going to say is, this part times this part equals this whole, right? So I'm going to write 1 part times the other part equals the whole. That's the question I'm going to ask myself. 2 times what equals 20? 10. And 2 times 10 equals 20, so 20 divided by 2 is 10. Everyone try number 5. Gisela, what question? What's my question going to be?
3 times 1 equals 12.
That's right. 3 times what? 3 times what equals 12? What? This part times this part equals 12. I know this part is 3, but 3 times what equals 12? Truman? Oh, go ahead. 4. 3 times 4 equals 12. So 12 divided by 3 equals 4. Any questions about this? Okay, let's take a look at page 19 now. Let's take a look at page 19. On page 19, you have a fact family, but it's missing a fact. Now remember,
All the pages that we're doing, is that all here?
oh, I'm going to write that on the board for you, but yeah, we're going to finish those pages for homework, yeah. So remember, these are all multiplication and division. You always have 2 multiplication facts and 2 division facts. So looking at the example, what are we missing, Abby? Are we missing a multiplication fact or a division fact?
Multiplication.
Because we have 2 division facts, don't we? So we're missing a multiplication fact. Does everybody understand how to figure that out? You have 2 of each. Does that make sense, Miss Laney? You have 2 multiplication and 2 division. Here's a multiplication, here's a division and a division. So I'm missing a multiplication, aren't I?
So you write that down.
Well, no, you don't write that down. So you know you're missing a multiplication. So the multiplication fact that you have is 7 times 5 is 35. That's the multiplication fact that you have. So look right. What's your question, Miss Mila? It's okay to ask Jenny too, but I might be able to help answer it too. What is your question?
How would I do the first one?
Well, what you look at here is, this is a multiplication fact, isn't it? That's a division fact, and that's a division fact. You need 2 of each. Here you have 2 division facts, don't you? But you only have 1 multiplication fact. So circle 7 times 5 equals 35. Everybody circle that one like this. So you know that you need 2 multiplication facts, right, Mila? You only have 1. You have your 2 division facts. Now, what do you know about your multiplication facts? With your multiplication facts, if this is 1, the other one, you flip these 2. 5 times 7 equals 35. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense to you? You see that? So that's the answer that you write in the blank on the side of the page. 5 times 7 equals 35. On the blank on the side, on the right-hand side. Look right here. It's already written for you, isn't it? Right here. This is where you write your answers down. Oh, Truman, do we work ahead? We never work ahead because I want you to tune in to what I'm saying, huh? But now we're going to go to the next one, Truman. Truman, in number 1, are we missing a multiplication fact?
Division.
We're missing a division. Let's write these down. We have 28 divided by 4 equals 7. We have 4 times 7 equals 28. And we have 7 times 4 equals 28. So you see we have 2 multiplication facts. You're right, Truman. We have 2 multiplication facts. Right, Mila? We have, so what do we need, Truman?
We need a division fact.
We need a division fact. Jenny, what does division always start with, the whole or the part?
Whole.
The whole. My division always starts with the whole. Now here I divided by 4 and I got 7. So in this one I need to divide by 7 and it will give me 4. Each way I switch my parts, don't I? Mila, does that make sense? Yeah? Blake, does that make sense? Very good, very good. What do you think about that, Chase? Very good. Miss Alexa, I have not been calling on you today. What is the matter with me? Okay, I'm going to call on you the next 5 times. Okay, sometimes I end up going around and then I miss. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take out our agendas. And so what you'll need is a small notebook. Show Chase what kind of a notebook we use for an agenda. Look right here, Chase. Something like this. Or hold up yours, Truman. Jenny, hold up yours. Something like this. Anything like that, a small notebook, and we use it for our agenda. Now, we always write the date first. 8/27, right? 18. Then we indent and we write math. We indent a little bit and we write math. Then we indent a little bit more and we write the page numbers. What did we start on? Did we start on 14 today? I think you're right, yes. So for homework, and then we'll have another practice quiz on Wednesday. Of course, a practice quiz, we're not going to turn in. You're going to grade it yourself. You're going to quiz yourself. So you're going to take the quiz in class to ask yourself, did I master what we learned? Right? Did I master the homework? Come on in. And so that's what the practice quiz is for. Come on in, guys. Just hang out at the back of the room for just a minute while everybody gets their everything written in their agenda. Good morning, Miss Cindy. How are you today? I got a text from your mom, just so you know. Hello, Miss Diane. Thank you so much.
Got your crew here.
Yeah.
Got your alcohol. You want to put it? You need one
In the
there?
freezer. I needed 2 of them in the
Now I
freezer.
put the 50% and 70%.
Put the 70% in the freezer because they're going to be extracting DNA from strawberries.
Okay. And then your paper towels. You need one.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And then I need to send something to the printer also.
You see a bunch of prints going on.
Yes. Okay, come on in and sit down now.